Hello, I'm Sweetie Biscuit, and this is my submission for Crypt of the NecroDancer um, for both Cadence, all zones, and Story Mode, uh, both of which I will be submitting as categories for AGDQ 2017. Both these categories are kind of meant to be done as a race against the any other submitters. Mainly, I believe Mudjo has already submitted his entry. There may have been a couple other runners planning on submitting as well. But yeah, I would highly recommend making both of these categories a race. We have a big racing league, and we feel that racing the game is a lot more exciting than normal speedruns, which can be really RNG dependent. And racing is a pretty good showcase of skill. Also adds a pretty heavy depth to running the game, in which you have to watch your opponent, not just to know how far they're in the game, but making note of any useful items they find, weighing risk versus reward, and time loss versus going out of your way to pick up those extra items your opponent might have found, etc., etc. But anyway, enough about that. So as I mentioned, I'm offering two categories here. The first is Cadence, all zones, seeded. Worth noting again, like last time, that seeded just denotes that we will be running the same dungeons. The seed that we run will be blind. We will not look at it beforehand. So, it still has that element, that trademark element of roguelikes. The other mode is story mode, which you can see on the screen right below the character. So it is an official game mode. And the game mode, the story mode, is not only the Cadence category, which I mentioned earlier, but also Melody and Aria. It's all three characters that have any contribution to the storyline back to back. But the thing about story mode is you can't run it seeded, and it also resets you back to Cadence if you die on a later character. So this is not very marathon safe, and also not very race friendly, since you can't force the same seed. We'd be running very different dungeons. We'd probably get very different items, and one racer would very likely just win by virtue of that alone. So to keep it fair, we're going to do a couple modifications for to make this a better fit for a marathon. Instead, we'll just be selecting these characters individually and doing one character run after another, and returning to the lobby between runs to switch characters and put in a new seed. Everything else, other than the fact that the dungeons will be seeded and that we will reset on the character we die on with this tweak, other than these changes, it'll be exactly identical to the in-game mode. So, no need to worry about that. But anyway, so yeah, just kind of showing that's what story mode is right there. I'm going to start this off here with the Cadence run. Just a quick demonstration that seeds are 10 characters long, anywhere from 1 to 10, alphanumeric. This would be a potential donation incentive. If you're just doing Cadence, there would be 1 seed. If we're doing the full story mode, we'd probably want 3 separate seeds, so that we're not running the same levels with different characters. It would keep the overall race a little more fresh to have 3 separate seeds. But anyway, so yeah, worth noting, I recorded this beforehand and commentating after it, because commentary is very difficult to do while playing. This game requires a lot of focus. We will have people on the couch completely capable of providing in-depth commentary, so that the racers, myself and Mudjo most likely, will be able to focus. So anyway, as far as game mechanics go, Crypt of the NecroDancer is a rhythm-based roguelike, dungeon crawler. You get 1 action every beat of the song. So yeah, it's essentially turn-based, but there's a strict time limit on each turn that is equal to the length of a beat. So first zone is really simple, but it also has the slowest songs in the game, and obviously that means they are inherently slow by that nature, because the turn lengths are longer. So we're going to be looking to quickly exit the first floor by use of trapdoors and just quick runs to the exit. Usually, Zone 1 is done with just the basic dagger, because looking for extra gear both takes a long time, and the item quality on the first zone is pretty low. But in this case, this seed had a titanium rapier in the blood shop, which allows you to pay health instead of money for items, which is really good because obviously at the beginning you don't have much money. And titanium rapier is one of the strongest weapons in the game. It does 2 damage basic, and if you attack distant enemies, you do a lunge attack that does double that. So just a quick first boss fight here. For every boss fight, you want to be trying to avoid taking any damage or missing any beats, because then you get a flawless victory and 1 free item. Usually you're looking to check the black chest on the first boss because you want a better weapon, but in this case I already have the titanium rapier, so I checked the purple chest, which will contain rings and magic. And both rings and magic, there's a lot in there that can really change the tide of the game. So in this case I got the heal spell, which actually showed off a bit of a bug earlier on. If spells after being cast need kills to recharge, and you can cast them before that, but it takes a blood cost. You have to blood cast the magic instead. For heal, this costs a heart, and it only heals half a heart, so normally you just lose half a heart for casting it through blood magic. But you're immune to damage while on stairs, so if you blood cast heal while the screen is fading out after exiting a floor, you get a free half heart without having to pay that blood cost. So heal spell is actually a lot better than intended because of this bug. So anyway, deep blues. Since I have the damage to one-shot the king, I have a pretty easy fight. I can just approach the king directly and win the fight immediately. Get a fireball spell out of that purple spell, that purple chest, which is very strong. It's going to do a horizontal 3 damage fireball that just goes until it hits a wall. Very powerful, especially against Blade Masters in Zone 4, which can parry normal attacks. So yeah, this is Zone 3. It's kind of a fire and ice themed area. The fire and ice hazards are pretty dangerous, especially the ice ones. The hot coal hazards you need to avoid standing still on. They will do damage to you if you do anything that causes you to remain stationary on them. And ice will cause you to slide uncontrollably whenever you step onto it. There are boots that protect against both these floor hazards, but obviously I don't have either of those. It's also, incidentally, the hardest zone to read as far as internal mapping goes. The layouts are very haphazard and difficult to interpret, which makes finding the exit occasionally very difficult. So getting myself boxed a little, trapped a little bit there, but kind of demonstrating a bit of a... The game does have invincibility frames. When you take damage from an enemy, you're invincible to damage from the next beat, which I actually exploited back there when I was trapped in a situation where I couldn't avoid damage. I took damage from the shove monster, which only is half a heart, and then took a hit from the black skeleton rider on the next beat, which normally would have dealt 2.5 hearts of damage. So, yeah, exploitation of some invulnerability frames there. I already have a good ring and 2 good spells, so I checked the red chest here, because there's not too much useful I can find in purple. But I get the glass jaw, which doubles all your damage output, but also makes you die in 1 hit. So obviously not really what you want to be taking in a race scenario in most cases, because you want to be able to, take a hit or 2. So again, using the fireball spell, they're demonstrating how they're able to just take out those Blade Masters immediately. Anyway, I should mention that this is the last zone of the game. This is Zone 4. Mapping here is conversely very easy because everything is a giant square and the exit is always on the opposite side from your starting point. So mapping is not the problem here, but the problem is with the enemies. The enemies are the most technical in the game. They require a lot of thought to tackle correctly. That said, I do have that Ring of Peace that I picked up back in Zone 2. Which is reducing the overall enemy count and also making mini-bosses that have a weaker version available downgrade to that version. Taking a bit of a nasty hit from that fire trap on the wall there. Those fireballs do 2.5 hearts of damage, but the Ring of Peace also provides an extra empty heart container, so thankfully I had the health to survive it without too much trouble. But yeah, for instance, that blue Banshee with 3 health would have been a green Banshee with 4 health normally, but the Ring of Peace downrated it. So here's the first of Cadence's end bosses, Dead Ringer. You have to hit all 4 bells and then get the Dead Ringer to charge up the middle. There are 2 possible starting points for his spawn, and thankfully I got the easier one. The right side one is very reliable and consistent. The left side one's a little bit riskier. So here's the NecroDancer. Collecting bombs throughout the run is important because of this fight. Without bombs to dig through the stage, you're forced to do these button puzzles with the 2 characters. It's very time consuming, and also it makes the fight more dangerous because the NecroDancer has a spawn limitation, and enemies left on the stage count towards that. So because I only destroyed 3 enemies from the stage, he can summon very few enemies in this phase, which makes him a lot easier. Also, using a bit of an AI exploit here to make him step just within striking distance. Normally he'll try to flee when you get close, but with proper positioning you can get him to jump just in range. So anyway, now that was the end of the Cadence category. If you were just looking at that, we are moving on to the story category. And the second character in the story category is Melody. Melody has a reduced health pool and starts with the golden loot that we got at the end of the Cadence run. The golden loot does 1 damage to all surrounding tiles, but only whenever Melody moves. If Melody doesn't move, it won't do any damage. There's also no way for her to replace this weapon, and there's no way for her to increase its damage. So even items like the Boots of Strength that would normally give her extra damage will not do so. That Fireball spell is really nice because, as I mentioned, Melody is capped at 1 damage on her weapon, and that offers a bit of an option for some burst damage. So Fireball and bombs are both very valuable in that sense. Speaking of bombs, I get the Blast Helm there, which gives 3 bombs on pickup, immunity to explosive damage, and also makes bombs placed by the player detonate instantly. It's really useful for immediate panic to just clear out surrounding enemies and dealing burst damage to mini-bosses and bosses. So here's Conga 1 again. Melody can really quickly clean up these conga lines, kind of demonstrating the power of the loot here. Getting Conga horizontal to me to use the fireball there to kill him in 1 shot, because he does have 2 HP, so killing him with the loot would take a little extra time. Since Melody has no weapons and no damage ups, getting that flawless on that first boss is really important. It pretty much guarantees some kind of armor from the Black Boss chest, because the Black Boss chest contains weapons and armor and boots, and the only items left in the Black Chest pool for bosses for Melody are the plate armor, which I just got, is the most common, which gives 1.5 points of damage reduction. There's also heavy plate, which gives 2, and also makes you immune to bounce traps and wind spells. And the last is the glass armor, which prevents damage from 1 hit entirely. It's the one you want the least, but plate armor is perfectly fine. So I find the Shrine of Darkness there, which is probably the most overpowered shrine in the game for racing. It gives you the Ring of Shadows, which lowers your vision rate, but also lets you steal from shops. It also gives you a map and a compass, and it removes all torches from the walls. The wall torch removal means that enemies are going to have a harder time seeing me from a distance, so it means I can avoid unnecessary conflicts. So getting a flawless on this death metal is going to let me check for purple and try and get off this ring so that I have better vision radius. I don't find a ring, but I do get that heal spell that we saw in the last run with Cadence. So you'll see me doing the blood heal glitch on the way into Zone 3. Checking this shop for, I wanted a food shop. Food shops let you get a gluttony charm and some food to buff your maximum health. I don't get it, but I do get the pawnbroker, which lets me sell off the Ring of Shadows and return my vision to normal, which makes things a lot less spooky. So yeah, as you can see now, without that ring, finding my way around is extremely straightforward. I can see the full map right from the get-go, and I even have, the compass with that giant purple arrow pointing me to where I need to go. So the normally tough to read Zone 3 is absolutely trivial with this. And And yeah, as you can see, the loot's move attack characteristic makes it really easy to kind of run laps around mini bosses and tankier enemies and just really quickly finish them off. I'm gonna use that free spell I picked up earlier to keep the Coral Rift's head from teleporting away. Makes for a pretty quick kill. Could have bursted him down a little bit faster if I wanted to use some bombs, but I opt to save the bombs for if I get into really nasty situations in Zone 4. Now, Zone 4 can be pretty rough for Melody, especially with the lack of ooze boots. That is, boots protecting you from the floor's ooze hazards, those green tiles. Ooze prevents you from attacking or digging and doubles any damage intake while you're standing on it. There are 3 kinds of boots that can protect against it, and you generally want to try and have those, but did not find any, so gonna just have to be careful around it. That said, I still can use magic and bombs while standing on them, so it's not entirely a lost cause if I get stuck on them. Another reason the Blast Helm and the Fireball are so good for Melody is because, as I've mentioned before, you need to be able to move in order to attack with the loot. So if you have an alternate way of dealing damage, that means that if you get fully surrounded by enemies, you're not just completely dead in the water like you are normally. So almost done here. This is the last floor here, 4-3. And I'm going to be having to fight the NecroDancer like Cadence did, but the fight's going to be considerably different. There's only one phase, and there's actually a time limit to the fight before you just outright die. It's also going to be a good demonstration of how powerful the golden loot is for handling large swarms of enemies, because there are tons of enemy spawns here, but none of them are too much of a problem here. Using the same lure strats from the Cadence NecroDancer fight to get NecroDancer to jump towards me and hit him before he can flee again. And yeah, for this last hit, you just need to clear the skeletons out behind him and then push him into the lava. And that's going to be it for Melody. Yeah, very fast character. It really shows how kind of overpowered the loot is at times. And so now we're on to the last character in story mode, which is Aria. Aria is kind of meant to be an extra challenge character. Not quite as bad as some of the other ones like Coda, but Aria does zones in reverse order, cannot get any weapons other than the basic dagger, and is also not allowed to miss any beats. If she misses a beat, she will die or use her potion, which thankfully she starts with a potion, which is essentially an extra life. But it essentially only allows you to make one mistake. I do get glass armor from the glass shop though, which will prevent damage from one external source. It does not protect against the damage from missing beats though, so keep that in mind. And yeah, I promptly lose the glass armor there to a Goblin Bomber I failed to really notice. Goblin Bombers move diagonally and will detonate if they bump into you. So, getting a heart transplant, which is a good boss killing tool, because bosses are fairly consistent, and the heart transplant removes the rhythm aspect of the game, allowing you to move as quickly or as slowly as you want. And with bosses being a pretty well-rehearsed sequence of events, it's very easy to blaze through them really quickly. And you'll see that when I get to the first boss. So yeah, right here, you're really kind of seeing the challenges of playing through Zone 4 on very minimal gear. Really got to stay on your toes. So I'm going to use the Goblin Bomber here to deal a lot of damage and break open the crate. Telepathy is a very strong option, but unfortunately that Glass Jaw is giving me +2 damage, which I really want right now. Or +1 damage, it's boosting me up to 2 damage. And having damage ups is really essential for a fast run. It also means a much safer run, because you know, dealing more damage means you clear out swarms faster, you get less time to get overwhelmed. So an interesting little bug kind of turned feature here is if I just hit that tempo up trap and then the bomb trap next to it. If a tempo trap is destroyed while it's active, then it never deactivates. So I use that to save a little bit of time by making the song faster. And here I'm going to pop the heart transplant to in order to rush through this fight a little more quickly. I'm going to check the purple chest here, looking for some kind of ring or some magic. I get a shield spell, which is really helpful. for pushing through some otherwise dangerous situations. There's also a trick you can do with it to take trapdoors. Trapdoors are normally inaccessible to Aria because taking a trapdoor makes you lose your multiplier, and anything that makes you lose your multiplier will trigger the missed beat damage. So ordinarily they're impossible to take, but there are exploits with food and shield spell that allow you to take them without losing the potion or dying. So I'm going to use the shield spell here to save some time. Otherwise that Minotaur would have charged really far away down the hallway and been a huge hassle to deal with. So yeah, this run kind of see the difficulties of reading Zone 3. Kind of do a lot of extra exploration on this floor that I didn't really need to do, but it can be really hard to interpret where you need to go on Zone 3 because the zone is just so kind of... It's very random and unpredictable. But yeah, that's it for Zone 3 here. Going to be moving down to, up to Zone 2. Boss strengths are reversed, so I can still do this throw and bomb strat. Normally after Zone 3, Coral Roof would have 5 health and bombs deal 4 damage, which makes that strategy not work, but since the boss order is reversed, this is technically Coral Roof 2, so it has 4 HP and I'm able to kill it just like that. Killing my Leprechaun here for a Lucky Charm. That changes the item pool up. It supposedly grants better items, but that's rather subjective and sometimes honestly outright incorrect. But more importantly, it makes it so that bats cannot hit you unless they have no choice. Bats move randomly. They're really obnoxious to deal with. But with the Lucky Charm, if they are next to the player and they have an option to move somewhere other than into the player attacking him or attacking her, then they will choose one of those other options. Yeah, it said bats can still hit you if they have no other choice but to do so when they are due to act. Interesting little quirk with the Boots of Leaping phasing combination is it lets you jump straight through doors like that. Kind of took me by surprise, kind of forgot about that, but it does save a little bit of time because normally opening a door does take a beat. Take a bit of an unfortunate hit there, which breaks both my Glass Shovel and my Glass Jaw, reducing me to 1 damage. Although, since I found Leaping Phasing, it does mean I can move pretty quickly to the exit without really having to fight many enemies. Going to be picking up a Fireball Scroll here. One of the very strong points about phasing is that you can place bombs and cast magic while inside walls. And that allows you to attack enemies indirectly quite safely. So I will be making use of this Fireball spell and Fireball Scroll in order to more quickly clear floors. The spider is kind of in a troublesome position, so I just bomb him away. And I just pop out and use the Fireball spell to kill this dieback quickly. So this is the last floor before Aria's final boss and the final boss of the story mode of the game. Have a really easy kill here because Fireball Scrolls do 7 damage as opposed to the 3 damage of Fireball spells, allowing me to one-shot that Red Dragon. So normally you're supposed to use the bounce traps in order to get yourself positioned properly with the enraged loot stage, but you can actually just attack the body directly to stand still for a beat and really quickly kill him like that. So yeah, very nice quick kill there, and that's the end of the story mode run. As you can see, the timer reads 1956, so just under 20 minutes, which is way less than the 40 or 45 minute estimate I'll be giving. That estimate just to offer some space for if we take deaths and are forced to reset one of the characters. It's an absolute worst case. I don't think we'll see more than 1 death, maybe 2 in the race between both of us. But you know, just for marathon safety, we'll keep the estimate on the high end. So moving on to other things outside of the immediate run, there are potentials for donation incentives, like we did at the SGDQ run. The game has 5 different soundtracks available. Donation incentives could be put in to dictate what soundtracks we play with. By default, Cadence plays with the original Danny B, Melody plays with the A-Rival, and Aria plays with Family Jewels. But that is fully configurable and very easy to change. Would add no time to have this incentive. In addition to these 3 options, there are also the Vert and Girlfriend Records options, and a random option, which will just random which version of each song gets played as you go. So all 5 or even 6 of those can be added. There's also the option to add cutscenes. A donation incentive to play the cutscenes could be set. The total length of the cutscenes is about 7 minutes. So it's, might add a couple minutes to the estimate, although with our generous estimate of 40 minutes, I don't think it should be too much of a problem. But anyway, that is it for the for my submission video for both Cadence and Story Mode. Thank you for watching.